Hi, Taz. Welcome to On the House podcast. Great to have you here, and yeah, a privilege to have you as our first official guest. So yeah, awesome stuff. So just before we get started, quick heads up for the listeners. In this episode, we'll be covering four parts. So one, Taz's journey. Part two, all things B2B landing pages. Part three, the Scroll Lab system, and part four, quickfire. So let's start off with Taz's journey. So Taz, started out in Thailand, in Hua Hin, managing restaurant websites, and then moved to Bangkok and worked for Director Magazine. So, yeah, can you just walk us through like the early part of your career, what you did, and lessons that still apply to today?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having me. I have this huge smile because it's funny. I've been on I think humble brag, 32 podcasts, I think now, and no one has ever been like, let's start way back when you were in Asia. So that's cool. I never get to talk about it, and it's always fun when I get to talk about something new. So I'm really excited to dive into that. So I'm half Thai, half Indian, and I grew up in India, and then I moved to Thailand for college, or you would say university, and for uni. But anyway, and so I'd moved there begrudgingly because I was only 16 when I finished high school, and my mother was like, I am not sending my 16-year-old daughter to the US for college. It would be like a shark attack, right? And so went to university in Thailand, in Hua Hin, and then my university actually opened a new campus in Bangkok. And after having the British education system in India, it was just so easy. College was just boring to me. And so I went to my dean and I was like, can I start my internship early and I can go work and make money too? Because I'm just bored. And at that point, I was already editor of the college magazine, head of the travel club, head of diversity and inclusion. I'd done it all, and I still had a lot of free time. And I was a college student who was broke. So I'm like, let me go make some money and get some credit. And she said, okay. And so that's when I went and worked for Director Magazine. I was very, very focused on becoming a journalist. And my editor at the time was Scottish. And he said, you're going to hate it. And I'm like, don't tell me what I'm going to like and not like. He's like, you're a great writer. It's all good. You're just going to hate writing for somebody else. And so I was deeply annoyed. But after that, I worked with him kind of full time for a good chunk of university. And then my computer science teacher had his own business. And I think now when I look back, I'm like, he was smart because he was leveraging free labor from his best kids in class. And so that was my first exposure to websites. He had restaurant inventory websites. About 40 of them, and we had to manage the inventory. And at that point, we didn't have automation or anything like that. So he had all of us update the inventory on the websites based on what the restaurants would report back. And so that's what I would do, is just a lot of that, updating the sites, putting in the inventory, making sure that the restaurants were stocked up. And then finally, after I graduated, I moved to the US when I was 20 and started working for an NBC TV station for the first year, writing news stories for them that came in overnight. And then a year in, I went to my editor there and I said, I hate this and I can't do this anymore. And I hate to admit it, but my previous editor was right. This sucks. And he's like, well, listen, I think you're super creative. You love the technical pieces. You're good at the website stuff. There's an opening in the marketing department upstairs. You should try for that because the station would suck if you weren't here. And I was like, oh, okay. So I applied for that. And that's kind of how I pivoted into marketing. And then that's kind of where I stayed the entire time. Finally went into, that was more like B2B to C, stayed in that, and then moved straight B2B. Became head of digital and website for about 3 companies, and then went out on my own unintentionally over the last couple of years, being just ratchet on LinkedIn. And we'll see how long I can keep that up before there's a point of diminishing returns. But yeah, that's the short version.
That's so interesting. I didn't know it was journalism into marketing. I just assumed it was, we just knew it was marketing, but that's so interesting. So went to Dimwan, worked for NBC station, Who HD, and then obviously when as digital marketer, a few big companies. Was it Plex where you had the segue into SaaS? Was that first real exposure there?
Yes. And it was so interesting to me. I always say that I worked for like Dinosaur B2B, 20,000 person company at Mercer. It would take 1 year to get a campaign launched because so many stakeholders and things would just move so slowly. And we had so much tech and so many people to wade through. So it was like Mercer was great because I got to like log into work, do my work, log out at 5. And it was great. Like it was the most relaxed time of my life, career wise, and I was getting paid decently for it, and I had the best manager ever. Like I was cruising. And then the bomb dropped that my favorite manager ever was like, "Hey, I'm leaving." And I'm like, "What?" And she goes, "Yeah, and I want you to leave too eventually because you're better than this. You can do more." And I'm like, "I don't want to do more. I'm happy." And she's like, "Yeah, but you're not going to grow just sitting in your comfort zone." So I started applying for jobs, and then I actually became the head of digital and website for Jobs Ohio, which is the economic development org for the state of Ohio. Very B2B. I mean, we're looking at like billion-dollar deals, right? So, I mean, they're probably now seeing the fruition 5 years later of the advertising that I did back then. But it was really cool to see things like, a company moving to Ohio and generating jobs here, and you knew like it was because of your coaxing and marketing and discussions and all of those things. So it's like ABM on steroids, because you're just like, you're trying to get intel to move to Ohio in the US. And so it was just an insane time, and it was so good. And then after that, I had my baby girl, and I was commuting like long hours, and then trying to drive back, I dropped my bags and take her up to bed. And I was like, I can't do this. I need something a little more flexible. Started applying. There were like 1,000 applicants for Plex. I'm like shocked I even got a call back. Did that. It was a fully remote position. And I was like, cool. And at that point, it didn't register in my head that there was a big difference between B2B and B2B SaaS. So I was like, whatever, it's, this is what I'm good at and whatever. And so I joined Plex, and I think it was drinking through a fire hose, just all the acronyms, and they followed very structured, like serious decision models. Like we didn't just have MQLs, we had like AQLs, TQLs, SQLs, like there was so many different stages. And so it was really a crash course into marketing and SaaS for, B2B. But it was great. It was a great learning experience for me. One of my claims to fame was just working on many, many website redesigns. And so the Plex one was like the biggest one I'd worked on at the time, 3,000 page website. That's what I was hired for. Did it. It went great, even with a lot of snags in there and that kind of thing. So that was my first foray. But at the same time, I was kind of addicted to it because we move so much faster in SaaS than we do traditional B2B. I remember this Jira ticket that I had at Mercer, and it was like we had started this Jira ticket, and it was an exact year later that we closed the ticket and it had launched. I'm like, we did not start this ticket a year ago. And in B2B, it's like pivot, do this, do that. And I was like, I respond better to that. But the problem with that then became you work a lot, and it's like you're like in a NASCAR race, or what do you call it, like Formula One or whatever. I'm trying to relate to you. It's going poorly. We go in circles, but you never stop. You never make a pit stop. And so you just crash and burn a lot. And so that's what ended up happening in the back half. Once I joined B2B SaaS, it's like, this is the perfect environment for me from a marketer perspective and from how I like to work, and me being very type A and organized and wanting to move quickly. But on the flip side of that is you work a lot, you crash and burn, which I did a few times. It's far more volatile, right? Like you have a ton of layoffs and instability, and you have a lot of higher pressures and numbers. Like I didn't have to report on numbers Before that, it was like, like, yeah, we got stuff launched for our clients or whatever. Cool, amazing. We're keeping the ship running. We're sending out the emails. Like the deliverable was the performance, right? Where you were like, oh, I got this email out the door, and that was good enough. But SaaS takes it one step further. Oh, the email went out the door? Okay, cool. How much revenue came from the email? How many meetings did we get? How many like quality ops from like one email? So yeah, so it's kind of like a love-hate, but I'm in it now. It's like a toxic relationship. It's like I can't leave. I'm too deep in it. So yeah, so that's how I came to be at this stage.
That's so interesting. So you did Jobs Ohio was between Mercer and Plex, and it sounds like
Yes.
obviously Mercer you wanted to get a bit more kind of craziness, but you probably obviously had Jobs Ohio in the middle there. But
Yeah.
and the other thing as well, I love how you're obviously trying to tailor it to Formula One. It's like it's a true sign of someone who creates copy for landing pages, like tailoring it to whoever you're targeting. So yeah, I love it. So just quickly before we obviously move on to the next section, so then obviously went full out with the scroll lab. So yeah, how did you decide then was the time to go into that, and how did you find the transition at first? Did you enjoy it? Was it a bit crazy? What was it like?
I think it was a result of a serious crash and burn. And I've told this story before where I, worked my butt off. I had a small team as head of digital and website. And, one member left, the other one got laid off himself. And like those positions were never backfilled. So here I am, 8 months pregnant with my second child, working 50, 60 hours a week, still running 45 projects, still managing all my partners, my budgets, my paid programs, still being responsible for all of those performance metrics. And then my, former boss at the time, the year prior was like, oh, things are going really great. I'm thinking about promoting you next year, but like, just keep going. And I was like, cool. So I never mentioned it again. Worked my butt off. All of this stuff happened. I went on maternity leave for 3 months. Still things were getting done. I came back, working through it. And then the annual review period comes in. She's like, you freaking killed it. I still have all the paperwork, right? Like, you killed it. It was great. Like, I have the receipts still. And I said, okay, cool. Awesome. Hey, is that promotion still happening? And she was like, I could just tell that she hadn't thought about it the whole year after she said what she said. And so she was like, oh, you just didn't mention it. So I, figured you didn't want it anymore. And I'm like, oh, well, what high performer would not want to get promoted? And so I think asking for that, challenging some of the things, like sometimes it doesn't work to your favor. And I just told myself, I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to be untrue to myself. So I kept doing that. But at the same time, I'm like, man, I'm working 50, 60 hours a week. And for what? To stay in the same place, like a hamster wheel, you're just like running, but you're not going anywhere. And so at that point, I'm like, you know what? I'm sacrificing a lot of time with my kids. I'm sacrificing a lot of time for myself. I will do my job and continue to do it well. I'm just not going to do the above and beyond thing anymore. And so once I clocked out for the workday and got my stuff done, I started establishing boundaries like, this is the time I'm with my kids. I'm not going to be on the phone giving my kids baths anymore. Like, we're not doing that. And I'm going to try to regain my sense of self by being creative, going back to like my writing roots, because I love writing. I just didn't like doing it for someone else. And so I was like, what would be like a cool passion project for me? And so I thought that I would do a parenting podcast for sensitive children, because my daughter is like extremely sensitive. And so I started researching all the stuff and how to do the podcast and all the platforms. And I have this whole document where I wrote out 70 topics. I mean, everything was great. And I left the marketing part towards the end because I'm like, I'm a marketer. How hard could it be to market a podcast? Like, whatever, So And then I got to the marketing part and I realized, oh, it actually is kind of hard to market a podcast, because if nobody knows you, it's like having a house party and you're like, hey, come over to my house. And they're like, I don't know who the hell you are. I'm not going to just come over to your house, psycho. So you got to go mingle, meet some people, meet people in parenting groups, and then bring them over to listen to your stuff. And I was like, okay. So I went to Twitter at the time and I'm like, I have 1.5 followers here. Like, this is going to be useless. I'm not going to just scream into the void. I went to LinkedIn and I had 1,200 connections. And I'm like, but it would be weird if I start talking about parenting stuff out of the blue. Like, people are going to be like, is she okay? So I just started writing more personal development stuff just to kind of learn the algorithm, and started meeting people. Then I met some other marketing people in there who were like, dude, you need to start writing about marketing. You have all this experience. There's not really a lot of like digital website people. You need to like write more about that. And I'm like, okay. So I started doing that. And it was weird because the unintentional side effect of that was people started reaching out to me. Hey, do you offer consulting? What does your company do? All of these things. And I think the light bulb went off in my head where I was like, oh, people are actually making a living doing this. Talking to people online and writing on LinkedIn, and people are coming in inbound. It just it just blew my mind, because that was not me. I was a lurker and I was rarely on LinkedIn. I was kind of doing my own thing, whatever. I only ever used it for job applications. And so I just kept writing. Meanwhile, my company wasn't too happy that I was writing on LinkedIn, because I think it wasn't even what I was saying. I was actually not unhinged at all. I was very professional and very put together. I wasn't tasked that I am right now on LinkedIn. Very like professional PC. But they just probably didn't like that I wasn't promoting the company and their ebooks and their, like events and all this other stuff. I was just talking about stuff, and they probably thought it was lack of focus on my work and all of the stuff, even though I was doing it after hours and being very respectful of those timelines and boundaries. And then finally, I got a couple of people who reached out to me for kind of consulting gigs and fractional stuff. And I was like, no, I'm employed full time. Well, then my company had a second round of layoffs, and they got rid of all the like director levels. And I was like, okay, so I got 7 weeks of runway in my mind from my severance. And I sat there and I was like, okay. I spent a week kind of noodling on it, talked to my husband about it. And I was like, you know what? I'm so burnt out. We lost so much time with our first child. I don't want to do that for my second. Like, what if I just took a couple of consulting gigs, but I just worked like maybe 3 days a week, spent more time with him, screwed around on LinkedIn. And then, if I made $60,000, which was a quarter of what I was making in-house, like, we're still financially okay, and I just need a break. And then I'll go back in-house later maybe, but I just want to take a break. And he's like, sure, whatever. We're good. Go ahead and do it. Anyway, fast forward. And I was able to like hit that within the first quarter of me like going out on my own, and then it just kept piling up. And then I niched down into the landing page stuff, which then really skyrocketed everything. And yeah, so it was totally unintentional. I had no dreams of being an entrepreneur, even though both my mom and dad were both owners of their own businesses. It just never clicked for me that that's something I wanted to do. So I always tell people like I'm the unintentional business owner, but it was mainly kind of a breaking free and wanting to just be accepted and build something around my life and myself without having to sacrifice who I am. Because I did a lot of that. I did a lot of the shielding, the context switching, and I was tired of that. So the real Tas came out July 2023.
Yeah. I love that. I love how it was unintentional. Like you fell into it. I was thinking a lot recently about like the concept of forcing copy, and you're just I've got 3 days to write this copy. I'm just going to write it. But then if you write it in a couple of hours today, tomorrow, and then you go, do you know what? There's no deadline on this. I'm going to leave it like maybe a week, and then it actually just comes to the surface and it's almost like just actually like you kind of it just like you gravitated towards it in a way. Like it was all kind of like it was meant to be in a way. But no, that's awesome, Tas. It was awesome to hear. Are we okay now to I want to pick your brains on landing pages. Are we good to go? Brilliant.
Yes.
So
good to go. Let's
great stuff. let's do it. So I think it was on LinkedIn again. I saw you said that many B2B landing pages aren't built right. So where do you think they're going wrong, and what should people do instead?
Yeah. It's funny because all of the things that I harp on right now, I did as a marketer. But the reality is when I was in-house, and I think that's like a core differentiator for me, is that I was more in-house than I ever was out-house, as I like to call it. But I had a budget myself, anywhere from like $1 million to $10 million. And 70% of that went towards paid programs and things like that to market the actual business I was working for. But 30% of that went towards partnering with agencies, buying software to make sure that the website and the digital platforms were all working, right? Keep the ship running. And it was funny because the way that I would make purchase decisions was so disconnected from the way that I was marketing it to my own buyers, right? And so I gave this talk at Hero Conference last year, the PPC conference, and I showed them, I was like, this is a typical landing page, and you can almost close your eyes and picture it, which is there's a form up top, there's like 3 things of text, some shitty headline about AI powered this or that, and a bunch of features that are listed below, and then a bunch of awards, and that's it. And the only thing that I typed in to get to that page was accounting software. That's it. And so the landing page that I came to gave me absolutely zero value, but definitely made the ask before I even knew where I was or what was happening. And as a marketer, those are the best practices we're taught. If we go to HubSpot, any HubSpot article is going to be like, here are your best practices. Kill the navigation. Keep it short form. One primary CTA. All of this stuff. And so marketers are kind of led astray. And maybe it worked back in the day, or maybe it worked for a completely different industry. But for B2B and how we make purchase decisions, first of all, you're never going to convert on the first session just because they've trapped you in there, right? And so as a marketer, we're looking at that page going, dang, that's a slick landing page because I've done all the best practices. I'm an expert. I mean, I did all of these landing pages, right? I had 60 that looked exactly like that. But then as a buyer, when my boss was like, hey, we're having issues with XYZ tool on the website. We need a new translation tool. Go find me some options and bring it to our one-on-one on Thursday. So it's Monday right now. I'm like, okay. So she slacks me that, right? I'm like, shit, immediately problem aware. Okay. Now I go and I'm like, vendor translate, like website translation tools, enterprise, because we're not like rinky dink. I don't want a plug-in. Okay. Now I get these pages and they all look like that. And I'm like, well, I need like a price range. I need to understand like implementation. Can you do multiple languages? Like I have all of these questions I need answered. So what do? I get frustrated. Then I'm texting my friend who's also head of digital at another company. And I'm like, do you have a website translation tool? Because we're expanding into these other regions. And I'm like, my boss wants this. I'm freaking out because I can't find this info. Or I go to Reddit and I'm like, hey, who are the best like enterprise ones? And how much do they cost? And then you get 7 different answers, right? So I'm cobbling together all of this information into this preliminary business case slide deck that I've had this template since I was at Mercer, that I've carried from Mercer to Jobs Ohio, to Plex, to Telium, and I've just changed the branding of the company that I was in. But that was the business case template that I would use to run around and do stakeholder approvals internally as the head of digital, right? It wasn't the vendor who's talking to everybody that needs to talk. It was me. I was the one trying to sell them on saying, okay, even though it was my budget, I still had to get the sign off on like, yeah, this is the tool that we're going to go with. Yes, these other departments are going to work on the implementation with me based on their bandwidth, all of these things, right? And at that point, I realized, shit, there's a huge discrepancy between who I am as a marketer, who I am as a buyer, the information that I need before I even talk to and engage with the sales team, because I know the minute I put my information in there, I'm never going to stop being harassed, right? Like it is going to be a freaking shark attack. Like I just knew it. And so I'm like, what information can I get beforehand before I have to make the call with them? Okay, so I go to all these landing pages. It's Monday. I get some preliminary information because I have 45 other projects. This is not the only thing that I'm focusing on the whole time. I collect some preliminary information. I finish that task. I close out all the landing pages. I leave. I'm done. Thursday rolls around. I have an agenda with my boss. And on the agenda, it's one of the things on there, website translation tool. She goes, did you get those options for me? Like, yeah. What are we looking at cost-wise? That's always the first question, right? And then who are we looking at? Like so my business case template was, here's the problem we've identified. Here are alternate options. We could try to do it manually. We could use, we could try to hire a service. We could try to hire a tool. If we went with a tool, it would cost this much. These are the 3 options. Here's the implementation timeline. Here's who we need sign off from. And, like the end. Here's the sales process and what happens next and how soon we would have this and what the adoption is. So like I had all of this set out. And she would be like, okay, cool, let's do the tool thing instead of a service. You can go talk to them now. Go have a demo with each one of them and just like, let's explore the UI a little bit more. Okay, now I go back, I search for these companies direct, right? I'm not trying to find the same fucking landing page. Sorry, I swear a lot. The same landing page that I initially did my research on. I go direct to the website, I go to get a demo, and then I managed to book a time, whatever. Now, in-house, as a marketer, you're sitting there going, okay, it's the monthly reporting call, it's time. And I tell my CMO, yeah, paid kind of sucked this week. Like we got a lot of bounces and like not a lot of people converting. So we're going to kill that campaign. But also our direct traffic was up and we got like an increase in hand raisers, like overall for the month. We don't know what that's about. Probably some PR stuff. Someone was probably searching for stuff. Organic traffic must be up. Anyway, back to the paid programs. I've done this 1,000 times. And you don't realize that the rising tide lifts all boats, right? That the research process isn't linear, like we are made to measure. It looks like a spaghetti bowl. That's how Devin Reed calls it. If you look up Gartner's B2B buying journey, it's a graphic from 2019. And that's how we buy. There's 4 areas. We're problem aware, solution aware. We're looking at requirements gathering and solution evaluation or something. And there's all of this shit that's happening around it. CFO, I have to talk to InfoSec. I have to talk to legal. I have to talk to product. I have to talk to IT. All of these people, they're involved in this process. And you think that your buyer just came to the page, bounced because they weren't interested and they're done. And you want to nurture the hell out of them. But the thing is, they are going through their own journey on trying to do the research, trying to figure out who the right people are. And you can show up in those instances versus trying to control how quickly they make those decisions. So in my mind, I'm like, man, what if a landing page had all the information that I needed before the sales call, right? To put into this preliminary business case and made my job easier. I would remember that company solely because they made my job easier. And I would be like, copy, paste, copy, paste. Imagine if I didn't have to text anyone or do some stupid Reddit research and all of this stuff. And now it's even worse because people are going to ask ChatGPT straight up. I need a website translation tool for my company that's enterprise. Here's my tech stack. Here are the issues that I'm having. Who are my best solutions? And so it's going to make assumptions and tell you all of these things based on the information that's already out there. But in B2B, we love to gate information. So where the ones that are going to show up in both instances on search and within any kind of AI, model is going to be the ones that have been forthcoming with that information. It's like, I always tell people, I'm like, would you marry someone before you date them? That's kind of what we're asking them to do. Give us your information. We've given you nothing. Or you go into a shoe store and they're hiding the shoe. They're like, nope, talk to us and then I'll show you the shoes. Don't look. How much does it cost? I can't tell you. But you're interested in shoes, right? What's your shoe size? What's your mother's name? Right? How much you pay in taxes last year? So that's kind of the logic that I went with and started building landing pages a little bit differently, based on like figuring out this business case that the buyer needs to do. then creating the landing pages as a result of that, and then looking at, buying behavior signals versus just optimizing based on conversions.
That is so. Do you know what it's like? It's like having a goodwill scoreboard, and it's like when someone just finds out about you and they're at 0 points, and it's like you say, you go into a shoe store, you've never heard of the shoe store, and you've got no knowledge of how good that clerk is, and you haven't built a relationship with them, but you can build a relationship with them, and down the line, then you're like, yeah, here's my card, just take it. But it's like there is this scoreboard that you need to. But it's so interesting. What I find most fascinating by what you said is, as marketers, we're told what to do, best practices, all that. But it takes actually being the customer and being the buyer and actually feeling and experiencing the emotion of how another company makes us feel, that we can then hit. And it's the same. It's the same with sales. It's like we're told outbound, outbound, outbound. But when and do you know what the biggest? Sorry, I don't mean to go, but the biggest realization for me, I tried all of the pressure tactics because I thought that was the way. Yeah. And then when they're done on you remember, oh, I did buy that and I got buyer's remorse, and I don't want anyone to have that. So I know that it's about long-term relationship building now, but it takes your personal experience to then kind of switch your mindset. But yeah. Anyway, it's super fascinating what you're saying. So focusing on consumption metrics, right? And because it is about conversion, but it's not about the short-term conversion. It's not about more clicks, change the button code, because that's the short-term thinking. It's about, we obviously want to get the conversion, but we don't want to focus on the conversion, we want to focus on consumption. So what consumption metrics should people focus on?
Yeah. So if we remember the whole story, and then we're looking at, okay, conversions only telling kind of it's kind of a lagging indicator instead of a leading one. So we've always been treating it as a leading indicator. The more conversions I get, the better. Oh, I'm getting not that many conversions. I'm going to optimize this page so I get more conversions. That's again what we have been taught. But the issue with that is there's so much that happens before that conversion ever occurs. And even Hockey Stack, they had this data on it, and it looks like a pyramid, which is, the first part is all the engagement metrics, the research, the way buyers are consuming information, what information they're looking for. Then they go into the conversion layer, and that's where they've decided to engage with you and make that transaction of like, here's my information. And then we look at the back-end sales metrics and the downstream effects of that, which is, the meetings, the quality pipeline, opportunities, revenue, all of that stuff. So those are kind of the 3 layers. But I think in marketing, we are taught to just ignore that first layer because somebody yelled once, vanity metrics suck. Without any context, and everyone's like, rah, rah. And then vanity metrics went away and they're made to be the enemy. But the thing is, they are positive or negative indicators of whether people are going to go to that next step, which is the actual conversion layer. So I look at it as the consumption layer, which is when someone comes to a landing page and they don't convert and they leave. We look at that and we're like, wow, what a terrible landing page. The bounce rate's high, no one's converting, it sucks. But what happens is, most landing pages, they're going to bounce after one visit anyway, because you've trapped them. They have nowhere else to go, right? So that is kind of the standard and accepted. But what are they doing on the page, right? So if only 30% of people make it to the bottom of the page, are we now trying to get 40%, 50%? And all of that is so reliant on the information that you're putting on there, right? And little like kind of breadcrumbs that you're leaving for them to consume the information on the page. And so we're looking at things like, okay, the heat map data, we're looking at session recordings, we're looking at how to position content on the page that actually fits in with behavioral science and how people actually read and consume content. So one of the things, for example, that I always say is, if nobody read any of the subheads or descriptions on your page and they only read the headlines, they should be able to have a deep understanding of what that page is about and at least understand a lot of things, right? Because the way people read are they skim headlines and then they dive deeper on something that's really interesting. And then you also have to watch how they're interacting with content. So, for example, I always use the survey thing, which is like, there's, companies like Winter who are running surveys and things like that. I used to take them when I was head of digital and website because I was the ICP and I wanted to sound really smart. And I'm like, this is how I consume websites. This is how I buy stuff. Oh, yes, I'm really smart. So like, I'm going to answer it this way. But then you put me on a website and I'm rage clicking because I can't figure out one component or I can't find the information that I need. I'm scrolling like an angry baboon, right? And so that's going to be more telling about what a user is experiencing on the website. And then you're also going to find things like, is there one key component or piece of information that's really important to them? So for one of my clients, I love using this example. It was such a great example. So Snagit is a screenshot tool, and we did kind of a consumption-based landing page for them. And what we found was in 2,000 sessions that came to the page of technical writers, 165 clicks were on the FAQ block that's like almost towards the bottom of the page. And it was on the fourth FAQ. And the question was, hey, this is a lifetime license. If I move devices, do I lose my license? Valid question. That, like, they're going to spend $60 for this lifetime tool that's going to outlive the devices that they're going to use that they probably recycle every couple of years. What happens then? And so we answer that question. 15% of all the clicks on the page were in that one FAQ. So we moved it up higher, and then we saw a 265% increase in purchases, not the free trials. Okay? You would never get that information based on conversion data, ever. You would never get that information based on conversion data. And so when we're looking at those things and those little signals, I mean, they skipped the free trial. They went straight to purchases because that was the biggest objection that they had. Those are the kind of insights that you're going to get, and you're going to be optimizing for the right type of information rather than optimizing a color to trick them, optimizing the form so that it's not so long that they experience friction. Like, no one gives a shit. They just want the information to justify a purchase, and you have to give them that justification. And what do they need? Would you ever buy something without knowing the price? No. Not in this economy, not the regular layman. Maybe Elon Musk isn't making decisions that way, but thank God we are all not Elon Musk. And so, like, we are regular people trying to make a decision. So you think that you're going to trick someone into making a $20,000 ACV product, conversion on the first visit. It doesn't work like that. They're looking for information. They're research heavy. Even buying pants, research heavy, right? I don't buy those on the first session. So I always tell people, I'm like, we need to respond to the buying signals. And that's what we found with things like, Snagit. So another consumption signal I'll give you is for another client of mine, we had, those tabbed blocks on websites? You have it's such a cute block. I've used it on 400 websites that I've done. I've used it on every single one of them. It's a tabbed block, so it makes sure that the scroll isn't long, and you hide all your value props in there, and you let them go and click through it. Worst. Because for another client in 2,000 sessions, not a single person clicked on any of the other tabs. And all their value props are in those tabs. So what we did...
Is that because they don't care about the value proposition? Or do you think you needed to change how they... Maybe they should always care?
Yeah. How I told you, people will skim, they'll look at the titles, they'll make a decision to dive deeper. Well, usually in those tabbed blocks, you maybe have a name for the tab. Integrations, right? Something generic like that, because you want to put a short word in there. It's not enticing enough for them to click on it. So we panicked, and the first thing we did was pull the value props out into a block that if someone skimmed, they could see the actual headline. And now I refuse to do tab blocks because I would rather have the page have the information that they need on there than hide any of the information as well. And so small things like that make a huge difference. But again, you would never get those insights with just conversion data.
It's so interesting. Sounds like conversion is just surface level. Consumption is the, and it's so interesting you say about not using tabs because, yeah, value props are so important. I think my mindset has always been if it's something that's not super relevant, but for some it will be a potential objection. I never like to have a really long scroll section. I'll have a slider where they go. I make the decision because I'll say features, for example. I want to go through all of the features. I'll tap 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 tap. But if they're not that important to the buying decision, they can gloss over it. So that's kind of been my mindset. But I think things like value proposition completely you got to have it on the page, right?
Yep.
You can't give them you can't. Yeah, you got to. Everyone's got to see it.
Yep.
That's so interesting, Taz. I love that. So I could ask you 500 more questions, but I obviously I need to start being a bit more selective. Let's move on to the Scroll Lab system.
Yeah.
So looking at your process, and it just ties back to what you're saying about when you went from being a marketer to choosing the translation software, you went through the process and needed to come up with a business case, and you needed to look at all of these landing pages to formulate that. And if they made that easy for you, you were the champion for them. So I noticed then obviously your process is helping your clients have those landing pages to build that business case. What's your process, if you can say, around kind of strategy to copy?
So my engagements are broken out into 3 parts. I don't do like long-term retainers and stuff like that. I'm kind of in and out. So the other piece where I empathize with a lot of marketers is resources are low, budgets are down. So I think the better partners are the ones that come in and then just get out. You do the work, you come in, you give them something of value, and then you let them move on with their lives. It's a better experience for everybody else. That's what I would have wanted when I was in-house versus someone like trapping me in engagement, right? So I have a 3-stage process. It's usually 90 days-ish on average. And the first part, before we ever start writing the landing page, most people will do like a buyer's journey. And in the beginning, that's what I called it, and that's what I did. And I'm like, that's not like what this is, because we can't control the buying journey. They're going to go in and out of the research components. So what we actually need to help them do is build this business case. For the TAS in-house who had this deck that I had to fill out, I need to help her make that deck so she can move on with her life and go do something else, because she's doing so much already. We shouldn't have her hunt for information that we already know, right? So I call it the buyer's business case, and I help map that out for clients. So we sit in there, I ask them for like some key components. So, any competitor battle cards, product information. We look at like the product category, not what they're calling it. Because most companies are like, we're the revenue generating platform. I'm like, what is that? Oh, we're a video tool. I'm like, well, that's probably what they're looking for more, because every platform generates revenue, So I challenge them a little bit on those pieces. We look at the market, we look at the alternatives, we look at the actual product and the features. And most times, the bigger the company, the more robust the feature suite. Well, how do you make that into 3 or 4 value propositions? And that's why we get into this situation where we're feature dumping. But that doesn't mean anything, right? So if someone's just yelling at you, all of these different features, like you walk past a shoe store and they're like, leather soles, right? Like 3-inch heels. And you're like, okay, But if you walked in there and you're like, hey, I'm looking for, a short heel. I'm going to a wedding. It's going to be outside. Like, here are my problems. I can't find XYZ. And then you talk about the shoes in context of the problem that it solves. That's a far better story. Like, humans respond better to story and context. And that's what you need to give them, right? Versus just yelling shit at them, which we love to do. AI enabled. And you're like, okay. I was like, so it may work like in markets or something where someone's like juicy apples or whatever. It's like, okay, cool. The apple has like 1 or 2 features, but your all-in-one platform has like 10,000. Which one do you want to talk about? You want to talk about them all. So you put them all on the page, and then you get nothing. So I try to figure out what those product stories are. So I don't even call them value propositions. It's like, what's the product story, which is how do we map your features to the actual problems that your buyer is having in the market? And how do we talk about solving them in context, right? Like, how do we talk about the solution that solves those problems? And then we look at the proof and credibility, have people like me using you, but also being very specific and relevant with the proof. We love to use the same 3 testimonials across the entire website, right? But we need to understand a specific product needs to have a specific product related testimonial. Use cases need to have use case specific testimonials. Pricing, even a starting range, right? Just saying, hey, we start at 35 grand. And you think that's going to be scary, but someone who has a 50 grand budget is going to be like, okay, it starts at 35. I'm going to have lots of room for like my various developer seats or my complexity here. So just a starting range. And then finally, what's the sales process like? And you don't have to sit there and explain everything to them from first touch all the way to closed won, but you can say, hey, you'll contact us and someone will reach out to you within 24 hours. You'll meet with someone about your use cases specifically, and then we'll meet with a solutions engineer and do a custom demo. Just because our platform's really huge, we want to make sure that we're respectful of your time. You're treating them like adults, right? Because when I worked at Plex, one of the things that really made people mad was we'd say, get a demo, and they were expecting a demo during the first call. And we're like, no, our platform's really huge. And then they're already pissed off because you're not delivering on something that you've promised or they assumed you promised. So be extremely clear, set those expectations, and put all that information out there in order for them to at least consider you and consider having a conversation with you. And then you watch, right? I always tell people, I'm not giving you a magic pill for like this amazing landing page right off the bat. I'm giving you the best first hypothesis, and we're going to look at how they're responding to this stuff. So for example, if you're selling to marketers, you're going to do less copy heavy, kind of more, a little clever. You're going to showcase a lot. Marketers are very visual, those types of things. If you're selling to DevOps or InfoSec, well, what are they doing? They need a lot of information. They're very marketing resistant. If you hide information, it's going to be worse. And then you complain about long sales cycles. We're the ones gating the information from them. So that's where when companies come to me and they're like, oh, our conversion rate's really low. I'm like, well, listen, bad news. I'm going to lower your conversion rate. But we're going to see an increase in things down the line, which is your quality meetings, your density of ICP coming to the page, your quality pipeline, your deal velocity. Maybe it's 90 days. Maybe we can get it to 80 days because you were upfront. Maybe sales is giving you feedback that the quality of conversations are better because the buyer's already equipped coming in. And so now you can get and talk about the meat versus trying to do the like small talk and get the basic information out of the way. You're not wasting time. So that's kind of like the whole angle. And so with Scroll Lab, we do the buyer's business case. We build that out. Then we take that, we put it into these landing pages that are very specific to where they could be in the journey. So are they looking for your problem? Okay, here's like this primary landing page that's kind of first touch, product related page, what problems you solve, how you solve them. Then you have a comparisons, like what are my alternatives in the market? How else can I solve this problem? And you're being very upfront with them. You could try to do it manually. You could try to cobble it up with these other tools. You could use other tools like us. Here's where you can kind of talk about the differences a little bit and educate them before you go in. You look at, most companies don't do this, which is when someone types in Calendly reviews, you just let the internet take the fall, right? Like, oh, go to G2 and blah, blah, blah. Why don't you have a reviews page, a reviews landing page where you consolidate and curate the really good testimonials, right? And testimonial stories, bring in G2, integrate all these agnostic sources, but you have a single hub and you're seeing what testimonials resonate the most, right? And then you have a demo pricing or whatever that comes after that. So those are the kind of core foundational landing pages that I give companies to start with. And then the final part is basically staying with them through 2 testing cycles for, reviewing consumption, because it is a kind of a new thing or a new way they have to train themselves on doing it. And so I stay with them through a couple of cycles. I show them how to optimize, based on consumption signals. And then I'm like, you're good, dog. You don't need me anymore. You do you, boo. Right? And I'm out. And it's funny because a client I worked with last year, and I did the same thing, taught her all of the things to look at, all of these things. And she messaged me the other day and she was like, we just had like our highest pipeline generation quarter in the company's history, because there's a lag. It's an infosec product, sales led, 60-day sales cycles. So you're going to see the fruit of the labor like much later. And so she's really happy, and she applies the same principles to any other landing pages that she creates.
That's such good news. That's such good. And obviously, yeah, I think obviously I want to be respectful of your time. So what we'll do is I'll just obviously respond to this. I'll ask you final question about where everyone can find you and stuff. But yeah, we'll just wrap this bit up because I want to be respectful. So the thing I love is, and I've fallen into this trap in the past, is when you're so focused on ROI for the company, you then go and work for that company, and help them, and you realize, oh, there's a bunch of other hidden problems under the surface foundational wise, but my job is to do what we promised in 3 months, so we're going to kind of like patch those up. And what you're saying is conversions are going to go down because actually there's a mindset shift that needs to happen, and then we're going to actually start doing things properly, and then we're going to test. And I think that's great. And when you were talking about, I've got so many things to say on that. I mean, I think the other thing is how, people often think throw testimonials out there. No, for a use case page, use case specific product page, you're thinking everything on that page has to be specific, like to what you want them to do and the journey you want to go through on that page. And coming back to the stories, I guess just one quick one quick final question is that is, do you say no more than one story per page? So work out what story that needs to be and then weave it, or do you ever go, let's do 3 stories and go a bit crazy?
On the reviews page?
Oh, or not the reviews page, for a page in general, yeah.
The product stories. What I have found is typically no more than 4. And sometimes the more complex the platform, they could have 6, they could have 7. So how do you do that, and where do you position them on the page, and how do you prioritize that? So we prioritize kind of 4 of them, and I don't do more than 4. Even the problem blocks, usually when there's 4, they start to get overwhelmed. So people respond best to 3-column blocks. But we put them in the FAQs. So if like integrations is like a huge deal, for every company it is, but it's like, is it a huge deal to your buyers? We don't know. So when we start to see things like, okay, 15% of clicks on this one FAQ, and we're like, that's one of the product stories that we kind of deprioritized. Let's do a variation where we move that and make it one of the 4 and see what happens then, right? So we're starting with the best first hypothesis, and we're starting to test these product stories as we're going through, and we realize, through testing and iterations and looking at buyer behavior-led optimization, right? While looking at that, we are realizing these are the 3 that they care about the most. And those are the 3 we're going to run with. And the best part I love about this is they can use these landing pages as kind of the sandbox environment where they're testing all of these things out and figuring it out. And then with like a very targeted ICP, right? Like density is like really tight through your targeting and landing pages. And then you take those product stories and then you put it on the main website because you know that those were the 3 that really made an impact from a paid perspective. Now you get to inform your overall website strategy based on that versus like the CEO's opinion, HR, product, everybody's like quilt, opinions and putting a pot roast on your main website. So it's kind of like you start there with that buyer's business case and it just feeds kind of everything that it touches after that.
Just kind of summarize that. Obviously, you've worked digital marketing, websites, testing, and it's like you've kind of then unified it into hypothesis, test, but then marrying the theory with the insights, then more testing, and it's just, it's fantastic. It's been such a. Before we wrap up, Tas, where's the best place for listeners to follow you? Work with you? Where should they go?
Just find me on LinkedIn. It's Tas Bober, TAS, and last name Bober, BOBER. I share a lot of landing page tips and tricks and insights. I also have a free resource hub, so go forth and conquer, like DIY, do it all yourself. Everything's organized in there by categories. And then, and then if you do follow me from this podcast, send me a quick note. Let me know where you found me. I talk to everybody. That's like, it's a blessing and a curse. And I'm also, one of my favorite hobbies is just making ratchet comments on LinkedIn. So if you don't like my landing page insights, hopefully you'll like all my jokes when I troll other people in the comments. So find me there.
Awesome. We're going to put your resources hub in the description. We'll put your LinkedIn. And Taz, it's just been a pleasure speaking to you today. Thank you so much. And
Thanks
wishing you all the
me.
best.